I have it up here, so let's look at 2019. Do you remember what meeting that was?
So I have,
You
Maybe
have
the
it?
first of May.
Thank
yeah,
you.
but it's in my font.
Good for you.
So, it looks like, if we're just talking about West Crafton Avenue, that we were talking about prohibiting parking on the easterly side. So I think that,
That's the church side.
That's that
Here's
side.
another video of exactly what she's describing
Mhm.
coming down. I actually have one where I drive down the street, avoid a car, pan over to the parking lot of which nobody is in it. I can show you that video as well, but, so, here's
Okay,
that.
so,
and then we said that would be on the easterly side between Steuben Street.
That's what happened. That's
Yeah,
what,
so I'm
yeah.
driving in the middle of the road here, by the way, with two kids in the back of this back seat.
Yeah, that's,
okay.
That's usually full.
Yeah.
Now, this is not about the church, it could be any
Right.
institution could be
No,
there.
no, absolutely.
That's
It's
at
really
4
not.
o'clock, and there's a mass at 4 o'clock on
Yeah.
Saturdays.
Just a moment, just a moment.
West Crafton Avenue, easterly side between Steuben Street to the intersection of West Crafton Avenue and Crennel Avenue.
Okay,
And then the other portion that was removed was just that little piece between the intersection of Broadhead.
Crennel
And-
on the westerly side
Yes.
between Broadhead Avenue and 55 Crennel Avenue.
Which is the service king, I think is what it's called, the auto shop right there.
That's what was in the original draft. that was removed.
okay. So
So,
if we put this back, if we put this back on the table, what is it gonna take to move this forward now that we have removed it? It's a brand new,
Brand new ordinance, so you just have to direct me to advertise it, and, we could probably be back here in a month. So, it would be at least a month until we could vote on it, given the publishing schedule of the Gazette 2.0. We could always advertise in the Post Gazette if you wanted to handle it sooner.
all right, so,
But my
That would be
my
helpful.
typically
That
do
was-
is the Gazette 2.0.
Yeah.
Those are my marching orders unless council directs me otherwise.
okay, and RJ, do you have any thoughts or comments about this?
I would suggest that if we're going to be going through a republication, we would perhaps even go further and do two separate ordinances, one for the West Crafton parking, for the inclined portion on the easterly side, and then for the portion of Crennel between Broadhead and the Service King, just because I recall from when we were discussing the ordinance in full, it seems like the concerns were largely directed at the portion of West Crafton going down Churchill Road, rather than the portion between Broadhead and the Service King. And so, I mean, I do believe, particularly when you're trying to make a turn out of Broadhead, that's a significant line of sight issue, and so maybe it would be best if we considered those two no parking spots separately.
So you'd be parking on both sides of the slope down then, right?
What, sorry?
Then parking on the sides of
This,
Broadhead?
yes, or, not Broadhead, of West Crafton.
Because that was a
What's
problem too, wasn't it, coming up Broadhead?
It's already no parking, it's just not enforced.
So,
She's asking if you're good with,
what RJ, I believe, is talking about is splitting the two pieces out
Could totally do that. It's up to
in
council.
case we think that we are not in agreement on both of those issues, on both of those. So there is just a recommendation
And there-
that we could consider that.
There are maps of all, I mean, they're MS Paint maps, but, I think they were in the folder for June 10th, possibly. Maybe May 29th. I think it was the meeting, I was not at, but you can see all of the proposed changes, which include the Johnson Street,
Yeah,
the.
it is the June 10th.
Yeah, so if anyone
West Crafton, Crennel, no parking. Yeah, that's that's where they are.
Just in case there are any questions, because I know there was some confusion about what part of West Crafton was included.
So, can I ask?
I mean, this seems entirely reasonable what we had, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but in the in the shared drive, I can see the map, I can put it on the
Mhm.
screen if you want. You know, this is exactly what I have videotaped.
Right, exactly.
The two locations, which, in to Mr. Amendola's, you know, this would include, you know, behind his house, kind of that area, and,
Mhm.
you know, so. I think it's evident, I think it's completely reasonable to establish what we should establish here in the sense that it's not, the street's not wide enough to hold all of the traffic that is going on at one. And two, if it's an issue of able-bodied people parking and having an access point to get into the church, then we need to set something up so that, I'm sorry, non-able-bodied people, then we need to make sure that we accommodate that, and the rest of the folks need to be parking.
So the
as well.
question is, it's, you know, is it not St. Philip's responsibility to accommodate access?
Yeah.
I mean, it's our responsibility to make sure that the roads are safe.
Put a handicap spot there and let them have a spot for in front of the steps, you know, so people can get in and out quickly. But we can't allow half of our residents to be driving on a main thoroughfare
Okay, so
over the yellow line all the time.
your point is well taken. What I'm trying to recall is, just a moment, we'll have our discussion, and then if we have a motion, then we can ask for citizens' comments, and if not, citizens can make comments at the end, okay? So what I am trying to recall is what was the objection that caused us to pull this piece out?
Because there were three motions in one, three locations in one motion. The mayor
Okay.
wanted to do Johnston, Phil wanted to do in front of his house, and then we had this. Well, not in front of his house, you know what I mean? Up on the hill. Don't misunderstand me.
The Harris
He's not
Purview
here.
and
The
the
Harris
Harris
Purview,
Purview.
I don't need to
okay.
go on for that
So
long.
there were no, it was my understanding that at that time, there was no contentions about either one of those.
Well, the folks from the church
Right.
came and said, we don't like it. And we decided then to take out that portion of it.
And discuss it a little bit
discuss
more.
it differently.
Now, we have been talking about trying to reach out to them. Have you been able to have a
Yeah.
conversation with
I
them?
think we've just been missing each other because of the holiday, but I call into the administrative
Okay.
office.
All right, so you're trying to reach out, Alice?
I wanted to say, there is a handicap parking that is in the school parking lot there.
So they're already accommodating.
So that is handicap, that is being handicapped. Obviously, anyone who's handicapped is not going to be trying to get up and down those steps.
Exactly.
But they go off to the side though,
Mhm.
and there are 4 steps, there are railings, and there is a pathway that
Mhm.
they can get up.
Okay.
But that's also on West Crafton Avenue. But it was that there were so many different places that we were trying to put into one. That was it.
Okay.
I mean, they were just so diverse.
Okay,
That's why we went.
so, I think we are at a point that we could entertain a motion to advertise this ordinance as it was previously stated in the combined ordinance. Is there?
I don't have the ordinance in front of me, do you, RJ?
That's
That's
the-
what.
That's what I read.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
So it would be the map plus the description of that. Would you repeat that, Steve?
At West Crafton Avenue, on the easterly side, from Steuben Street to the intersection of West Crafton Avenue and Cornell Avenue, and then on Cornell Avenue, on the westerly side, between Broadhead and 55 Cornell Avenue.
Okay, so I can't remember all of that, so.
But you can say as
I'd like to make
stated.
the motion, Steve's.
Can I ask before you do that,
Yeah.
two questions? Did you mention when we voted on the Johnston Street that it was an issue around turning radii of safety vehicles, fire trucks?
Yeah, that's already been
Correct.
put through.
Does that impact, is that part of the issue here as well? Wouldn't that, by definition, this street?
Well, I mean, that has been the ongoing discussion, is that the street doesn't meet state requirements for the width of the street, and that it provides, that it's a safety issue.
Before a motion would go forward, then wouldn't it make sense to involve the church directly and give them an opportunity to follow up on whatever comment that they had at the June 10th meeting?
We've been trying to do that, and so basically, this is a motion to advertise. This is not a motion to pass. It's a motion to advertise. And this is something that's been going around and around and around. And so I am entertaining this council to see if we can pass a motion to advertise while we continue to make attempts to contact the church. However, my personal opinion from everything that I've heard and seen over these last months is that we have a safety issue, and it's our responsibility to address the safety issue, and the church's responsibility to make sure that they're good citizens. And anything that we can do in a cooperative way, but it is going to be the church's responsibility to make sure, to help us make sure that their parishioners, if this passes, ultimately respect the ordinance. So, moving on, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
We've already debated it.
Well, we can have more debate. At this point, it goes to community comments. Anthony.
Anthony Salo, 568 Broadhead. The only question I have, does this include in front of the church entrance, right across from Councilman Amendola's house?
It did not in the original plans.
Not in front,
Okay.
but on the back part.
Okay, because the only reason why is, the way there is currently no parking there, but it also says, except for Saturday and Sundays, but people have to park on the sidewalk, which according to Borough
So
ordinances.
you're talking about what?
So it is still considered West Crafton, but it loops around that curve.
Right, and so the ordinance at this point is from Cornell to Steuben.
Okay, so it's not included in front of the church.
Well, it is in
main
front of the
entrance.
church, it's not the size.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify
The front door is
that.
like right over.
Because that's a part of the issue as well, because there's folks that park on the sidewalk, and fire trucks are not gonna be able to turn in front as well onto that street, because in order for cars to park on both sides, which technically is legal currently, they have to park on the sidewalk in order for any other vehicles to be able to pass through that street.
Are you familiar with what the entry plan is for, in case there's a fire? Okay, entry plan is to enter through the parking lot on Cornell, straight across the parking lot and up the driveway
Okay.
into St. Phil's, okay? There's no way in the world, I don't care if you have no cars parked on West Crafton Avenue, you're gonna turn a fire truck into St. Phil's from West Crafton Avenue. So the plan is that you'll come across, and fire trucks will enter from Cornell Avenue through the parking lot, which is a straight shot up the driveway.
Well, it's just shocking to me that cars are allowed to park on the sidewalk.
I'm sorry?
It's kind of shocking that cars are allowed to park on the sidewalk. That to me is kind of
Okay,
alarming.
well, I mean, you keep restricting and restricting, excuse me, okay? Restricting and restricting, and they're closing churches down and communities down all over the place, and you start restricting where nobody can go to church, or you make it so difficult, then you're gonna have another empty building in the Borough of Crafton. Because if you notice, if you pay attention to the news, okay, the diocese is shrinking, the amount of people going to church. We have a great church building down here, we've combined it, there's a lot of people. You have to give them some leeway somewhere. Now, if you're gonna take the parking off of West Crafton, the parking off Cornell, the parking off of Broadhead, where? Tell me where.
I understand that, Mayor, but the church,
Okay,
just like
we
an
have-
organization with any other
hold on,
organizations
hold on,
within the
this is-
borough, we want
Anthony,
to work with
hold
them
on.
hand in hand.
Hold up, bud.
Please, hold on. You've made your point, and we understand it. The mayor has made his point, and at this time, we have a motion for this area and we've noted your concern, and we can talk about it as a separate issue and address it in a separate issue,
Thank you.
okay? And Kristen, did you have another comment or?
Oh, just about the, I think, I may have misunderstood Councilman Kraus, but when he mentioned, handicap accessible spots, like maybe allowing them to have a spot by the steps, that kind of, like, that still creates a problem, because you have a car parked there, but if they have handicap, they have a handicap
Right,
parking.
and Alice
Yeah.
had mentioned that they
Yeah.
do, so it's been accommodated for.
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
fine, I guess.
All right. Roy?
Roy Neiman, 102 Haldane, real quick. Thought I heard somebody say, I'm not sure who, that it's difficult to contact the church or something.
Well, no, they have been missing each other. There have been attempts
Okay.
over the last couple of weeks, but with the hours and various vacations, they have not managed. But we are making every effort to connect with them
Okay.
and discuss the issue.
Very good, thank you.
Okay? All right. Is there any other discussion on council about this motion?
I'd just like to say something about, it's been mentioned by Brad here tonight that comments were made that there's never been an accident on that street. Ms. Shuley included it in her email 2 or 3 times. There's never been an accident on this street. I'm the person that has said that, and I can sit here and tell you, I was a police officer here for 33 years. I never, ever took an accident report on that hillside. Now, I was involved in hit-and-run collision on that street, on that hill at 2 in the morning with a bad guy that Robinson was chasing. I had a head-on collision on that, but there was no church going on. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was handled. So, I've had this thrown in my face a few times here that I said there were never accidents on that roadway. I never took an accident report on that street going down the hill in my 33 years. And that's all I'm speaking for. Now, maybe Sergeant Bloom did an accident report on that hill. I don't know, but I had never. So my comments are not just pulled out of the air.
We get that.
Okay, thank you.
We do understand that. So if there are no other discussions, can we have a roll call vote on the motion to advertise, as we have stated, the parking from Cornell to Steubenville and then Steuben Street. I told you I need a brain reset today.
You need some water?
Probably, actually, thank you.
It's the map there.
Yes.
Right after the vote.
That one.
As stated. There you go, stupid, thank you.
Well, I mean, Steubenville technically is just across the bridge, it's Steubenville Pike, so
Yeah.
almost there.
Steuben Street,
All right,
yeah, there you go.
are we doing a roll call?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Damitz? Yes. Ms. Glasser?
Yes.
Mr. Valchek?
Yes.
Mr. Amendola?
Yes.
Ms. Perry?
Yes.
All right.
So motion to advertise this ordinance has passed. Okay, moving on to discussion of the backflow preventer mini grant program. So we had discussion of this at the last meeting, fairly extensive. Solicitor was asked to take a look at it, make adjustments. He has provided us with an updated version that is substantially the same. Would you care to make any comments about anything anything note that you have suggested that we change?
No, there's really no sense in reinventing the wheel, and the ordinance that Brentwood had adopted was pretty much on point. The changes that I made were very minor. I'd even call them non-material. And RJ made a couple clarifications with customers and grantees and renaming the program, which looks great to me. So it's really just up to council to decide if this is something that they're interested in pursuing. It's really a policy decision.
Okay, so before we even entertain a motion, since this is discussion portion of our meeting, does anyone have any questions, comments, thoughts about this program?
Yeah, I do. Section 17732, eligibility. I think we talked last time about how we were going to actually determine a time frame of who would be eligible. You know what I mean? So we're not opening ourselves up to something that happened in 1987.
Right.
So I don't see anything in here aside from, it says here, any customer experiences a sewage backflow shall provide written documentation on the standardized form to the borough, but there's no time of when that, so we gonna do last year's in this as well, or the year before that? I'm just trying to.
What do you think we should do?
I think that this program is a good starting point for a larger discussion of things that we've tried to have in this body before. About this, I'm at a real loss because a lot of those people on Sterritt get flooded every year. And a lot of people in Maxwell were flooded last year, and a lot of folks get flooded in the town, so, I don't wanna open it up to everybody, but I wanna have some kind of clarification. I mean, it's up for us to decide. I would say within 2 to 3 years, we'd have to have a cutoff point.
So are you saying that within 2 to 3 years?
Let's go back to 16. Anything from
Okay.
16 on or 15 on, it's up for discussion.
So your thoughts are that on implementation, that we should allow them to go back 3 years to document the 2 instances. And then once we've adopted, should we have language that does some time bounding, so that, 5, 10 years from now, somebody says, oh yeah, I had trouble 10 years ago, this year.
Well, this is just, Mr.
Well-
Borough, what are your thoughts about having some language in that regard?
It's really up to council to design it
Right.
however you like. From a legal perspective, it's sound, and if you decide to say that you have to have 2 incidents in the last 5 years, 10 years, 6 months, here forward, it's totally within council's discretion to choose what you think is fair for the program.
So would you think that some kind of language that would say within the previous, so that we're not changing the dates within the
right.
previous X number of years?
If you're gonna say 2 occurrences, I think that's a good number, and I'll stay with that, and we can, to play devil's advocate, we can say 2 occurrences within the past, 5 years. Maybe it's a rolling calendar from the last storm event, as, it's just, since January 1 of whatever date, and we could go have something like that in there. Because to me, this seems a little, like I said, it's a good starting point, just seems a little vague, and that's concerning.
All right, any other thoughts?
Mr. Brad, you mean to tell me that you know what damage we had on Sterritt Street, with some people having over $10,000, $15,000 worth of damage? You mean to tell me that if we put this program on the table, that those people are gonna have to wait for another flood before we're gonna give them?
I don't think that's his intention at all, is it?
Oh,
No, that's not
Would you
how I
explain
understand
that?
it. He's
Can
trying
I-
to get them
Can I
included.
ask
He said 2 events.
Yes.
He's trying to back it
Up
up
to 3 years ago.
In the last
Yes.
16 on, they've been flooded how many times?
Just for context, we had residents come in this chamber and indicate that they've been flooded for over 50 years. So
Right.
you know, do we want to open ourselves up to having claims on our books from stuff that have happened in that time? Or do we want to have a start date and say, from a particular date, we're going to accept claims for this program? If you had 2 storm events from January 1, 2015 to July 8th, 2019, we will consider these for this backflow prevention program. Please submit them to the borough with any documentation, et cetera, et cetera. That's all I'm trying to indicate, because I do want to include the folks that have been flooded in the last 3 to 5 years, but, you know, I know we don't have
We don't want
the
to make
wherewithal.
them wait to have 2 more.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
Yes, and all
The program is also not designed so there's a limited amount of backflow preventers that you'll be installing each year. So council can decide each year, and RJ, you could probably, I know
Yeah.
we've talked about this, about setting a budget amount and,
How
you know,
much
whoever
funds we
applies, the first come, first serve, and
So-
you gotta wait for the next year.
there are a couple aspects that I do want to touch on, sort of to speak to Brad's point, and also to discuss the cost, you know, of the program per year to the borough issue. So regarding sort of the time frame, one thing to think about is if we want to provide sort of a backdate, which I think really once this is adopted, that could be a reasonable policy decision where council could essentially, you know, unless our solicitor has any objections, motion to say, okay, we're gonna consider this program retroactive to XYZ date. It would also be important that we consider what sort of criteria could be considered a documented backup that is not a cause of negligence, because that's the way that the program is written. And I mean, negligence is, you know, we could use a less blanket word, but you know what I mean. It's if they can prove essentially that this was not something where they needed to snip the drain and, you know, clean out the lateral, or the lateral collapse, or this or that, if they can document essentially that this was not something where they needed to maintain their own portion of the lateral line, if this was an independent, you know, then I think it would be reasonable to set sort of a back date and say, okay, if you can give us like pictures and or show that this wasn't, you know, work that necessitated fixing your lateral line, it wasn't your fault, then potentially we could qualify that. I think that that's reasonable. These devices aren't prohibitively expensive that it would be difficult to accommodate. Now, regarding the cost, something that I kind of felt was important was when we did, you know, this sort of renaming of the program from just a shared cost backflow preventer device installation to calling it sort of a mini grant program, is the implication is council can, in the budget, essentially set a line item amount. And so, I mean, I would be really surprised if, let's say, you know, it depends, maybe between $1,000 to $5,000 if we're splitting the cost, which I think 5 is really on the high end. The engineers would expect it would maybe be 1,000 to 2,000 per, you know, qualified installation if we're splitting the cost halfway of the lowest quote. So I would be surprised if we had 15 people, you know, every year that could document that there was no involvement in the lateral line and then apply for it and so on. So essentially, by calling it a mini grant program, it's like we're allocating, let's just throw a number out there, $15,000 in borough funds per year to the grant. When the grant is expended, then, you know, you kind of get queued up for the next year's worth. So that way, it's not like there's a risk of unlimited cost to the borough if a lot of people are coming out of the work and saying, look, we can document all these things. But, you know, again, that's maybe something that a policy decision that can be made after the program is adopted.
Okay.
So.
I mean, with that context and clarification, you know, it does make sense. So, I appreciate that, thank you.
Are there any other questions or discussions?
Was there any discussion about a pilot program of this with a hard stop budget cap?
Well, we're sort of using Brentwood as the pilot program because they came up with the program. I think their line item is $10,000 for that. It didn't look like it was expended last year. I can say that with the current size of our sewer fund, we could easily accommodate a $10,000 to $15,000 line item for this. And again, I would be really surprised if we even hit that in a year.
There's been extensive discussion, particularly since last June's rain event, that has really, a lot of the community have consistently and repeatedly come to council. And I think that has raised council's awareness of larger infrastructure programs that we may need to consider, and that we are looking at this as, not exactly a stopgap, but something that will help residents as opposed to them having to wait for larger infrastructure.
Yeah, that's my point. I mean, it seems like an immediate thing that can be done, should be done
Right.
perhaps, but the reality is the larger infrastructure problem is the blighting problem that needs to be addressed,
Right,
and that
and-
will take time.
Right.
So this is something that can be done today. There's also plenty of devices that are readily available at hardware and plumbing stores that are self-installed that cost less than $30. So anyone who doesn't have one of those installed in their house today really should be doing that at a minimum, because I'm sure they can document without waiting for another raindrop. They can document the issues that they've had. So it seems like we should go forward with this immediately.
Right. Any other?
I'll just note that council can always put a hard stop to the mini grant program by not funding the grant program on a year-to-year basis. So
Yep.
it's up to council.
All right, so our next step would be a motion to advertise.
Yes,
If we pass,
yeah.
if we
Mr.
put a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Kraus made this recommendation to have a 5-year.
Well, I mean, in all fairness,
Is that?
I mean, I think RJ's point is well made, that we could adopt a certain policy provision, since you guys have already done great work on drafting this. We don't have to, if this body is okay with that, we don't have to change it. We can advertise it and then maybe institute something after.
I find that reasonable as long as there's no legal concern that you have with that.
No, I mean, but to Mr. Kraus's point, the original point, which is if someone had a documented incident from 2000, the year 2000, and then another one last year, that would be 2. And as long as council's comfortable with that.
So we're saying 2 within a 5-year period, is that what
That's
you're-
what Brad had originally said, but it sounds like he's backed off
I'm
that
just
recommendation.
willing to discuss it, because
Yeah,
I
no,
see.
like-
The way it's drafted, it could be any documented incident at any point in time, I think.
Is there any way a motion can be passed tonight where we add that language tonight so we don't have to wait?
Oh, no, we don't need a motion. We don't have a motion yet. We have a model,
Right,
so we
the
can.
motion to advertise.
Right, so that would be where we would go tonight.
Can
So
what-
in discussion, we could make those changes.
You could direct me to add the language.
So why don't we direct you to add the language in the advertisement and go forward with it? That way it's all in there and it's
The language
advertised.
To
To
include
the language,
3
to
to 5
the,
years.
to the
Yeah.
ordinance.
Well, so we would need an exact year,
Yes.
since it's a program.
July 1st, 2015, is that what's?
Well, do we need to have dates, or can we say, so that you're
You
not
can.
changing it every time?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just pick a start date with the program, what the look-back period is. So right now, there is an unlimited look-back period. So if somebody has a receipt from 1950 that you think establishes they had a sewer backup that wasn't negligent, and they have one from last week, then they have their 2. If you say it's only for 5 years, they'd have to wait for another incident. So this is just, I'll put my personal 2 cents in it, is that I think that the unlimited look-back is a fair and equitable way to approach it, because you're not making somebody wait to have another flooding event and perhaps save a receipt or something like that.
I do want to point out that part of and this is something that why I would maybe suggest that we sort of tease this out as a sort of official adopted policy after putting this as a codified ordinance, is because one of the qualifying factors is within 48 hours of receipt of a report of a flooding, backflow incident, or as soon as reasonably possible thereafter, Public Works Director or Borough Engineer goes and investigates it, and sort of provides the appropriate direction for how to figure out whether it's collapsed or not. So functionally, nobody that has had a prior incident, unless we have some sort of documentation that happened, which would probably be a very recent window of time, can't necessarily meet that. So at this point, if you're doing it in a way that's officially codified in the program itself, rather than sort of approaching it from a policy, officially adopted policy practice, then you're going back and retooling the ordinances, almost like a tiered system of, okay, you qualify in this very specific, we have to find that new criteria for retroactive ones, and then rewrite the whole ordinance, whereas.
Right, and we do have the report from last year on file.
We do, and I mean, as was very briefly just mentioned at the last meeting, I think there are a couple really obvious incidents from the June 20th floods, like, the issues on Sterrett Street where, we know that was not due to a blocked lateral, So I would say personally, my recommendation is to advertise as is and then adopt those qualifications as sort of an official policy stance with a motion, just because that'll kind of push the time of adoption out. If we go back, revise, don't motion to advertise now. But also, I think that maybe it would be good for the borough staff to just do a little bit of digging through the files and see if, what is actually there. If anything that's documented, I know at least since I've been here, we've been encouraging residents and property owners to report if they have a backflow incident. We kind of blasted it all over the internet after about a month ago. And any sort of reporting we have in that could at least be, okay, we have a good history 1 year back, 2 years back, 3 years back, and that might sort of inform what council would officially adopt as the policy position for looking back. So that's just my suggestion.
I think that's already been done. I think the chief of police and Rob got together and looked for, backflow problems over several. Is
Oh,
Rob
we're
still
still,
here?
you're manning the camera.
Yeah,
Do you want to
yeah.
come back?
Well, what we did last June is actually,
Didn't we
we did an
research
invest.
that?
Yes, we did. And the criteria we used to investigate this incident that occurred at Sterrett was basically check the line, and I think I said that at the meeting. Want to check the main line, make sure there's nothing, no defects, no problems, no issues with the main line. Then we wanted to check the laterals where the one house was backed up. The one lady, the 50 years of problems, I've been here 5 years and never had one call. Not one call on that property. I want to make a point of statement there because 50 years ago, she was never ignored or neglected. I never got one call on that one property. The one at Sterrett Street,
Find any.
I'm not using that.
Yeah, no.
the one at Sterrett Street, again, we investigated, and I think my recommendation at the time was to try a backflow preventer. But the
Right,
way
that's
the,
where this
right,
talking about.
and the lateral itself though, most laterals, 99.9% of the laterals are tied in on the top of the sewer line. So when that pipe gets an opportunity to flow full barrel, it's not impacting anybody's personal laterals tied into it. The gentleman had the issue was tied into 3 o'clock. So half barrel of that sewer line, that's all he had. And once it got to half barrel, then it discharged into his lateral. So there was an issue with the way the lateral was connected to the main, and not just like the Borough screwed up. It wasn't a problem with the line. It was a combination of things. And that's why my recommendation at the time was to do it, check valve or backflow preventer, to at least give him full barrel of that pipe running before he has any problems or issues. And really, since I've been here, I think there might have been a handful of people having basement flooding.
I think you
And
mentioned
they were-
something on Maplewood.
There was one on McMunn, and that was at the top of McMunn, and obviously water flows downhill. So if that lady's to back up in her basement at the top of McMunn, that whole line had to back up. So anybody tied into that line would back up before the house at the top of McMunn. So there's obviously a problem with the lateral. Maxwell Street, that's not because of sewer lines, that's because of the road.
So we're talking about specific instances at this point.
I think really, the due diligence doing the reporting is the most important thing.
Okay.
And I think you're gonna be surprised to find that there's not that many backup issues with sewer lines in Crafton Borough. I mean, Maxwell Street's a roadway thing. The lady lives at the bottom of a 45-degree steep driveway, no driveway, drains, they're all there, but they're not functioning properly, and a root drains into their driveway.
So what I'm hearing is that this will probably be a very low-cost grant
I
program.
don't think
by
you're
your
gonna, I don't think you're gonna have that many people
standards.
that have justified reasons for a backflow preventer. We did install one at the bottom of Woodlawn in Chartiers. This property backed up every time we got a decent rain. And I was in there probably 5 or 6 times in 6 months. And that's when we decided, the previous manager and council, to do the backflow preventer. That lady hasn't had a problem since. Well, she did. Last June, she did have an issue where the indulgent went in her basement. But other than that, that historical rainfall, she's had no problem. So that's why the recommendation was
Okay.
for 92
So-
there for that.
So the point I'm trying to make is that I don't think there's much documentation. And so these people that have suffered this already are not gonna qualify for this.
Okay, fair point. I mean, you make a good point.
So they've gotta wait for another
Yeah, no, I get it.
problem.
I think you're, I mean, with the further.
We know that there are problems on Sterrett Street, so perhaps that should be our pilot program.
Well, I think your pilot program is going to be when you have people that, like Woodlawn and Chartiers. When you have an incident where you have to go back there 3 or 4 times a year on a decent rain, not a historical rainfall, but something that's going to have an impact. I think the
Right.
further investigation at Dinsmore and Elmwood would probably be a great candidate.
Yeah, and we do have, you know, records from you going up on Stair Street last year, so we know that situation. And we have not heard from those people about whether they had trouble this past June when we had,
We announced the,
right, and they were here at the meeting
yeah,
and didn't speak specifically to any issues that they had.
no, that doesn't necessarily mean they didn't have
So-
them, but we haven't gotten a
But you know
report
what,
yet.
these are suppositions about individual cases. We have a mini grant program that we're proposing, and we are having a discussion about it with a goal towards potentially advertising this mini grant ordinance. And I don't know whether specific instances are gonna help us any further.
Yeah. This probably should be examined more as sort of a general program going forward, less than a remedy for prior issues, which would be dealt with sort of at a policy level.
Right.
Once this is
And we have,
adopted.
I believe we would have some discretion, as sort of pointed out by the manager, you know, with policies. So, I will entertain a motion to advertise the backflow preventer mini grant program as written, as currently written by the solicitor.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay. And we have a new motion. Is there any community comment about this? Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, can we have a roll call vote?
Mr. Kraus,
Yes.
Ms. Damitz.
Yes.
Ms. Glosser,
Yes.
Mr. Valchef,
Yes.
Mr. Amendola.
Yes.
Ms. Perry.
Yes, motion passes. Okay. So, I believe that Eric had some questions about the sign variance for Planet Fitness, and I will entertain discussion
I can
or
run over
questions.
to the borough office and hopefully find paperwork if you would like me to do that. It hasn't been printed,
Okay,
so if you don't mind, I'm waiting for this.
all right, well, shall we,
I don't get emailed anything.
not yet,
Right.
not yet. We'll have that, so if you want to run over and
Okay.
get that, then let's go on to Mr. Kraus's request to discuss a requirement that alternates on commissions and committees be required to be willing to step up to any empty, full-time positions on their committee or commission.
I mean, where I'm coming from with this is that there's a couple things that I think we could do a better job of educating the public as to what opportunities are out there to get involved at whatever level. To the mayor's point about volunteerism, these are volunteer positions, so we do need to encourage it. And I think sometimes folks aren't sure either what these positions are and how they work, and there needs to be better context there. And then as part and parcel of that, it should be, I think, you know, you are the alternate on X committee, that when the person steps down because they moved out, that you need to step up, because that's the entire definition of being the alternate there. And I think that it would help streamline some of these committees and move them out. You know, we have a lot of this debate here inside the Crafton Beltway, and a lot of folks that want to get involved because they come to these meetings and because they know, you know, it's all very much interconnected. So as a result, the folks that are sitting out there as alternates that aren't connected don't even get the opportunity to be part of the process, and that's really where I'm coming from.
I just want to say that I think requiring it might be a little harsh, because people don't often have the complete motivation to want to do it, but they're more than willing to serve in an advisory capacity, an alternate. So the reality is including a first right of refusal, right? Meaning, when there's an opening, you go to them and say yes or no. Are you up or are you out? There you go. And then you can go ahead and advertise it. But you go to them first, you ask them if they want it, and if they don't, then you move to the public notice. Right? It solves it, it ensures it. We're not left with this situation tonight where, well, I think we asked them, yes, well, they were in some of the meetings, so they probably knew, you know, we would have a firm, they were asked, they're up, they're out, whatever it is, we move on.
However we get there, I mean, I'm more than open-minded.
The same thing in a grander picture of it, you know. It's a job, a volunteer position, but it's a job. So we know with some degree of certainty how many hours a year, what sort of activities, and the things that are involved in the daily duties of said job. So why not have a job description? In the role of civil services volunteer, you'll be expected to attend oftentimes 1 to 2 meetings a month that last anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, et cetera, et cetera. Why wouldn't we just have job descriptions for all of those sorts of positions?
Point taken.
I mean,
Point taken.
just to add to that, I mean, I've had people solicit me as just a member of council asking me, what am I even doing on this thing that I'm applying for? And, you know,
So,
sometimes it's Byzantine.
Do we need then, sounds like we need an ad hoc committee to walk through the commissions and the committees to come up with those job descriptions with the help of our borough manager?
Sure.
Do I have any volunteers?
Well, I mean, my question is this, I mean.
Yes, here.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, do we?
Was that a yes?
No. My question is, would we not have those on file though somewhere in the borough offices from prior?
Well, there might be, that would be
Right,
possibly
let's form the committee, and the first
one.
action of the committee is ask for
What there might be,
yeah, what there is.
and to evaluate it and to see if it's
Simple.
adequate.
Now we can move
Do I
on.
have another volunteer?
Sure.
All right.
Oh.
Okay, so we have,
No, that's okay, Alice.
wait, nobody, we didn't have to, doesn't have to be 2? All right, Alice and Eric. All right, then, coming back around to the questions and understanding of the sign variance. Eric, did you want to, it sounds like you really did some homework on this?
No, I'm on the advisor, whatever it is, for the zoning commission. I'm not sure what
okay.
that job really entails. No, so they sent a picture, a little thumbnail picture that is very, I'll say they're,
So you're an alternate on that?
yeah, I'm an alternate on it. So
Which I
I got
believe-
the
yeah.
meeting documentation, I got to remove from that and get advertised for it, so we should have a job description for it. But the reality
You
is.
could go back on at the
Right.
end of this term.
Absolutely. So basically what they give you is a little picture, and she'll bring it in. And it's like somebody cut out something from a Planet Fitness ad, stapled it on and said, here, that's about the size that we want. And my question was, well, if you've ever seen like a pizza shop with a piece of plastic that has embossed letters and then 3 light bulbs behind it,
Uh-huh.
you know, that's probably, we can do better than that considering the millions that just went into improving that district than a sign like that. So looking at that sign, I was like, really? That's what Planet Fitness does? And so a simple Google search yielded lots of pretty Planet Fitness signs around the country, all over the country. So I said, that can't possibly be it. So my question is, simply put, what assurance does this borough have from this company to have a sign that's befitting of the context of their brand? That's all. And I didn't see anything in what's written there, so why wouldn't we ask them for a written assurance that they're gonna place a sign that's in context with their brand?
That's one of the, that's a condition that the zoning hearing board could place on approval of the
It
variance.
seems like something that we could advocate for in that meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so if that is what our interest as council is, would it be appropriate then to have representative at that meeting to ensure that that
Yes.
question is asked?
I agree. I also, yes. I would also suggest that if that is the will of council, that somebody should reach out to Planet Fitness and say, council has an issue with this type of sign you're choosing. Any chance that you can put a traditional Planet Fitness sign rather than the pizza shop Planet Fitness sign?
Probably shouldn't use that language because I'm sure they're not. I just,
No, I
you have
understand.
one shot, right? You have one shot to get it right, as you said, because when you
Yep.
move to appellate, you won't get an appeal unless you express an interest or a concern now, that's all.
Yeah, well, I'll be prepared then at the meeting to put on a case about
Mhm.
whatever. So,
But you're
I think
recommending
that
reaching
someone
out
should
ahead.
reach out ahead of time
Okay.
and talk to them about that.
Okay, and what would your recommendation be as to who that person ought to be?
It could be the manager, it could be me, it could be the zoning hearing board solicitor, whomever, whatever you please. I'm happy
So-
to do it. If whoever's doing it, they should, whatever that sign looks like, we need to communicate that, so we know.
Okay,
We know what to
we're
ask
almost
for.
done.
Well, I have pictures, so.
Okay.
To the shopping center, are they going up together?
I can foster
What? So,
It sticks out, so.
Brad, just mirror it.
so RJ, do
Mirror it from
you
your phone.
have open communication with the zoning commission?
Yeah, we can we can
So,
get in touch with them.
one of the recommendations that Steve has made is, okay,
Well, actually, I guess there's like 4 in each of these, so. Splitting
RJ,
them up
is this
is
in the
not
shared
darn
drive?
stuff, it's terrible. Well, no, because.
well, but you know what, this could just be an issue of how they're doing the graphics.
I agree, that's why I
There could be
said.
no issue here. I mean, knowing how people do these things.
Oh,
Marcia?
yeah, sorry, I didn't.
But it's, you know, again, it's somebody who photoshopped something to say, here, this is the size.
Right,
They weren't saying, here is the embossed letters in the pretty gold
Right,
paint we're going to
exactly.
use.
Which it
And that's what I'm
is,
saying, it's just a clarification.
right.
But worth noting that this particular diagram at least shows that it's
That's what it was.
3D.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so if you see the yellow part in the back, that's sort of the background, and then it shows,
This is commercial.
Okay, so this is, the
That's
yellow
exactly
is
what
the
it was.
background. Okay, that small part. So,
No, it's a piece of plastic, it's clear
Yes.
left and back there with the light confusion.
and then the second layer at least.
so basically what you're saying is you don't believe that it conforms with their brand?
You can go to the Bridgeville, you just
Okay.
pull it up on Google Maps,
Sure.
they're very pretty, they're relief, individual letters, it's a very nice sign, and this one doesn't look like it's in, it looks like.
It's a step down from the Save-A-Lot sign, to be honest with you.
Maybe.
All right, so Steve is recommending that we reach out to these people ahead of the hearing?
The zoning
Be
hearing.
better.
Well,
It's gonna be a
somebody
flip
reaches
wall.
out to Planet Fitness ahead of the hearing to say we have concerns about it, so that gives them some opportunity before the meeting to change
Just,
their mind.
yeah,
And,
please go, sorry.
okay, so basically, in your absence, we were saying that the person could be Steve, it could be you, or it could be someone from the head of the zoning commission or the solicitor of the zoning commission. So my thinking is that council has raised a concern about this, and that we should probably reach out to the zoning board as opposed to going over their head directly to planning commission. Do you think
Yeah,
otherwise?
Well,
could-
I only like the fact, I like one of us,
Okay.
both of us doing it, because we know what we want.
Okay.
And our leverage is we're going to come and talk about that at the hearing, and in order to avoid it, this is what
Okay.
we like to see.
So do you want to reach out to these people?
I
or would
could,
you
yeah,
like
I
to-
can.
And it's,
Okay.
they're asking for a dimensional variance, then it's just about the size?
Yes, this is, the
Okay.
question is the size of the sign,
Right,
not
I-
the,
Design.
so it's essentially that sign, but with a yellow backer instead of a
Those look just like.
no
the-
backer.
Yeah, no, they're just.
Okay, so what these are,
Is that what you would like?
Those are individual letters.
Well,
Right,
there's a
right.
yellow one up in the corner
So this
there.
is the same individual letters on
You
a
see the
yellow
one, Brad,
background,
that
I
looks just
think
like it?
because it's red
Sure.
brick, and so the mulberry would not
That's
stand
what we're
out.
getting.
Yeah.
No, the.
yes,
the-
that is what we're
But-
getting
That's
by this
clear
description.
But we,
letter,
because if
diffusable
you
letter.
look at this
not gonna
particular
fit.
diagram, you can
It won't
see
fit on the building.
the yellow backer, and then there's a piece that's,
Even this would be huge.
Yeah.
I mean, if this is, the same line sign is like nicer than what potentially.
Yes,
Oh,
that
so
was
this
what
is
I
a
was
backer to the freestanding
yes,
letter.
because
Here's
the
a
logo's
building that
red.
looks
Okay.
exactly like what they just did
Right.
downtown.
That could
down
be-
in the- Right, this is exactly what the facade of our current facility
Yeah.
looks like. Let's get that.
So, yeah, to be clear, what they're applying for are 3D letters and a 3D logo just on a yellow aluminum backer.
That's, so it's not a pizza shop sign, as
Yes.
much as they are using it, the backer as contrast, so you can see the letters against the red brick.
You
So
should show the franchisees that one, that's really nice.
I think it is too.
Yeah.
I also
Brad,
just
can
want to
you
note for the
Brad, can you
record,
email that
this is the only
me
thing
and to Archie, I
preventing the
guess.
Planet Fitness from opening at this point in time.
What's that?
That, I just wanted to note for the record that this is the only thing preventing the Planet Fitness from opening at this point in
I
time.
don't think that council's saying,
Just so we.
we don't want Planet Fitness.
My intention was just to bring
I
this
think
to our,
council's
their
saying,
attention.
we wanna go
No,
on
it's
this
not.
record.
We don't need to create any
Which is
kind of
reasonable.
council prevented Planet Fitness
That's-
opening narrative.
That's not the intention. Just
So-
want to let you know where we are in the process, that was the only reason I
Yep.
included it in the report.
Doesn't
So-
the
This is
owner
the-
of the shopping center have anything to say about that, after all the money that she has put into it?
Just don't-
I'm
I mean,
sure she
it's
does.
bad.
Well, it depends on how if that's their business and how they've negotiated their leases. And at the end of the day, we don't have final say either.
Wow.
No. I mean, listen, this is you know, maybe we should talk about it in executive
All
session,
right.
because I don't want to get into legal theories, et cetera.
All right, enough said.
That was not where I thought that was going.
Okay. Are there any other discussion
You're a
items?
trooper.
Martha?
If we can update the blight and the housing, where we stand with this, how many have been torn down, or, and 96 Noble, is that?
That has been purchased. I mentioned that the last meeting. It went on sheriff's sale to a private concern.
So now what?
Now it's done. It's over. Now they own it, right?
Yes, now they own it, and if they don't, so we have the opportunity to reach out to find out what their intentions are, what they're planning on doing it, what their timeline is. They're going to have to negotiate with the school board and with the municipality for back taxes, and there will be multiple opportunities. If they do nothing and leave the property as it is, we start moving on then. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Okay. All right, but to answer your other question about the blight, I did, at the last meeting, there were talked about trying to re-energize the committee, and I think Mr. Kramer was up for that. And you have discussed that list is probably overinflated.
Yeah, well, okay, so two parts to that. If we're looking at sort of the list, the short list for demo, we've essentially worked through all of that except for 52 Ballroom. And I guess 96 Noble was, you know, on there as well, but both of those properties are going to be quite a task, and I would recommend that we pursue some sort of grant funding if that was something
Right,
we were
but
going to
your
undertake.
question is about getting the list updated.
Yeah,
For the-
she was still here, was still,
Well, as you know, I mean, you've been at the meetings, you know which ones we're addressing. The question is whether that list itself is, needs addressing.
I would, this was something that we were working on towards the beginning of the year, but of course, you know, there's some other projects that have come up and it's hard to find the time to completely finish
So-
it. But I do think regarding whatever was done over the summer, the way that the blight maps were, or the rental, you know, there were a lot of different things on that one map. I think that the way that it was done was essentially any property that owned taxes on it whatsoever was essentially
Called
identified
as a blighted
as
property.
blight. Yes, so, some exercises that I was doing with the one intern that we did retain throughout the year was, okay, what happens if you multiply, you know, the total average taxes on a property in the borough by 3, because at that point, if you're not paying taxes for 3 years on your property, it's much
So,
more likely.
Okay, you're
you know.
talking about the details of
Okay, yeah.
how we might deal with this.
Got in the weeds. The point is
Okay,
it
so
narrowed down.
Marcia is asking what we can do about it.
Yeah.
You are indicating that there are some issues with being able to address this because of bandwidth and
Right.
other priorities.
But we do have a nice map
So-
that has narrowed things down that we can
Okay.
talk about.
So can we then look at re-energizing the Blight Committee? And Marcia, are you interested? Are you on that?
I was, and I'd be happy to share it
Okay,
again.
so let's see if we can get Mr. Kramer, who has left because we're running so long or whatever, and you and RJ, and let's get that
You're my
moving
member.
again and looking at how we can reevaluate that list.
I mean, in the context of the list, I mean, there are properties, 129 Dinsmore, 1528 Bar, you know, that don't
To
even
speak-
pass an eye test, or do we not?
Right.
And my question is, are we not just sending the building inspector over for look-see, so they can just file a report and say?
1528 is condemned, and the solicitor actually just recently got the documentation to start working on moving forward with that. I think the last time I met with the engineers, maybe last week, I told them to go ahead and do an evaluation to see what the cost would be.
Yeah, it's ready as soon as you.
Right.
And 129 Dinsmore?
Or maybe not bid it out.
We haven't, that one, I
So
think
let's-
it's just coming up on delinquent enough to.
Okay, so let's get the committee going again, and let's get some work going on this, and then let's put a regular report on our report to say what's going on.
I mean, this is, you know, I'm not trying to, instigate or anything, but this is a comprehensive plan, this is something that
Yes, I'm there with you
everybody I hear from
1,000%.
says, when are you gonna knock down these houses? We've been driving past them for 20 odd years. When are you
Right,
coming down?
okay, so my suggestion is we get on the stick, I will get involved with it as well, and we do some targets, because we have budget time coming up for next year, and we're going to have to set how much money we're willing to spend on this. And so we need to know what our time targets are, and we need to also look at properties that maybe are on the list that shouldn't be on the list, others that are on that list that have some opportunities for remediation, for helping getting into various volunteer programs that help with those
Right.
issues. All right?
I mean, that's just good
All right. Okay. Anything else
for discussion.
this evening?
One thing that didn't come up, I kind of thought it would, the mayor brought up before, and I thought it was a great point. People, with regard, I heard it a lot as well, the Crafton celebrates. The people who actually do the hard work of delivering a wonderful thing. I'm glad we applaud them here, I really am. But I guess it's probably incumbent upon us to come up with a better communication plan on how to get the message out there that you need to volunteer, if you want to have this, if you want it longer, if you want it better, if you want, there has to be something that should, the genesis of it should be this group and not the volunteers themselves.
Exactly.
To come up with, I don't know if it's a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter or something like that, or, whatever it is, if it's money that they need because they're not getting the volunteers, something to get it out in front of the people that it's not
We've been
as.
using that at every meeting. Also, with Savvy Citizen, we've been doing it in the newsletter.
But what I don't see is numbers, and I'm a data person, and I think that we live in a world of data now. So in 1976, how many volunteers were there, and how many man-hours was that to deliver that? I mean, just back of the envelope kind of stuff. Versus today, we have 14 people at the Corps that have donated 40 to 60 hours each of their time, whatever it is, just to kind of show visually, like, it used to be this because we had 10,000 hours worth of people time, and today it's what it is because of heroic efforts of these 9 people, 3 people, I don't know, who've put in this many hours, right?
And I hear you, and I believe that that would be a very good thing. Again, it's about who do we task, and how do we get that done with the resources that we have. So
Wouldn't the first place to go would be just to ask the current crop of volunteers, how many volunteers did you see? And what was the average best guess of how many hours?
Angelica knows that. And Angelica has that. She probably could tell you the number.
Yeah, we would have
Angel.
to request actual hard number data from, if that exists from Crafton Celebrates, just because for several years the borough has kind of taken a backseat in being directly involved with
I think it's
supporting the
really
event.
a request
So,
worth making, so
yeah.
that people can see, my goodness, you get a letter in the mail asking you to give a couple of bucks, what that is, your $30 can create this kind of an impact on it. I don't think people realize how easy it would be for them to either donate their time, or if they don't have time, maybe donate something else in kind, or make a contribution. I don't think people realize the impact that would make, but they do wish that it was as big or as grand as what they might recall it to be.
And to kind of support where you're going with this, in the 2019 budget process, it was the first time that the Crafton Celebrates Fund was actually officially line item budgeted. So, prior to that, we were helping with administering the bank account. We would still sign off on checks and everything, but they weren't represented.
They really had considered themselves for a very long time an independent organization. And there's just over the last couple of years been more of an understanding that it is a community event, that it is a borough event, and working towards supporting them in more ways. But definitely asking Angela. One of the things that happens is once they're done, they're exhausted and they don't want to talk to us for a while. So, but absolutely, I think that the idea
I think it's a
is
dialogue.
sound, and I think that it's important for all of the community events, like the senior dinners and the other things that we do, that we make them more visible and we provide more information. And it's something that there's been slow movement on, but excellent.
It used to be when you had a booth in the park, your organization was like the Cub Scouts, and there was a schedule for all the kids' parents, which when they were going to work.
Well, not only their booths, but if I recall correctly, if you were participating, you had to provide either monetary support for the setup and takedown or volunteer hours.
3 people for setup and 3 people
And
for tear down.
I'm not sure how much follow through there is on that at this point. So, but definitely a
If they know
discussion
what it
point
costs,
to
and if
be
everybody
continued.
knew what it cost, maybe they'd be more inclined to do that Kickstarter, or whatever it is that would take to get the help that they need so that people are happier with it, because it was a great event. It seemed like a terrific success.
Absolutely, so I think that's a point to take forward in the day-to-day to figure out how to implement it better.
The numbers will be much easier to run this year, now that we have line item budgets, so.
Yes, well, as far as costs, but yes, time and numbers.
Costs, yes.
All right, anything else?
I have a question for RJ and for you as well. This touches on the zoning ordinance, which I've gone to some of the same I mean, I'm by no means an expert, but I've gone to the things and seen the lectures, and it's like, I'm really excited, so don't get me wrong, because I really want this to go through, but where are we at with the other zoning ordinance that we changed for the brewery?
That passed.
That passed the number of months ago.
I understand that, but there's been no follow-up to council as to what's happening between.
We made
There's a lot of-
the change. There has been nothing happening on the real estate, from what I understand. Is
Yeah,
that?
I mean, because there are people that I see that come up and say like, I'm so excited, we're getting a brewery, great job, council. And it dawned on me that, we've had no update as to.
Right. We made it possible to have a brewery based on interest, and there has been nothing commercially moved forward. Is that an accurate statement? Yes.
But my understanding is that we made the change for somebody's request, that they were interested.
We did, and that was a condition of them moving forward, but there has been no commercial exchange, sale of the target real estate. And that is private deal, private issue. We are now situated so that anybody else could come in here and have the zoning and not have to go through the ordinance change in order to do that.
I get that. I mean, the point is that we were told we had, a fish on the line, and all we had to do was pull, we were gonna get something done.
Yes,
Moved
but
it
we
right
have no
next.
control over the real estate transaction, Brad.
Thank you.
I mean, what else can I say about that?
Well, the gentleman came to council under the pretext that if you do this, I will come. So we had no
Yes,
control over whether they're
yes.
coming or not, and we did what they asked, and we never had follow-up. Nobody ever came to this body and said, your actions had zero impact, or had any impact. We should have been consulted, and there should have been a follow-up conversation. And we run into executive session when it behooves somebody else, but not when we need to have a follow-up.
So what is it that you're suggesting? What do you want?
Wow, you answered the question, so I appreciate that. But
Yeah, I mean, he was trying to put a deal together, and before he could even approach doing a real estate deal, he had to know that if he pursued the real estate deal, that he could have the kind of business that he wanted. It's a pretty normal process.
Right, but wouldn't we have had a follow-up saying, hey, it fell through, guys, just so you know?
No.
Because I don't know that it's totally.
No, I don't
yet.
think we would. I
Yeah.
think that if I have a crazy idea that I'm gonna open something and it doesn't work out, I may have come to a governmental agency to ask if I can do this, and they said yes. If I don't follow through on it and it doesn't happen, I have no recourse. There's no reason
Yeah,
why
that's not-
someone from the public would come back to you and say, oh, the deal fell through. I don't
Right,
think
that's,
that.
my point is not really that I'm interested in what are all the deals that happen in the borough. I'm just wanting to make sure that the information is being disseminated to council, because unless my memory does not serve me correctly, we were told that, oh, we need to do this now, we need to spend the money to do this now, when if we had known that it was unlikely that this person was going to open a business here, that would have been handled in this very motion with this money spent. So we're spending this money to do one thing, and we're gonna go back and do the C2 and C1 districts where this person's business would have been anyway. And that's concerning because we spent that money very quickly when it was indicated that, we should do it there now, and then nothing happened. There was no follow-up, no information, why
Okay,
would
so
it-
I can speak to this because I was the person that recommended that we quickly pass an ordinance amendment. So yeah, I can definitely confirm that I recommended that that's something that we make an immediate consideration for. An individual contacted the borough, they wanted to know if they could open a microbrewery. I said, well, let me take a look at the ordinance. The only thing that was prohibiting at that time a microbrewery with brewing options going into either the C1 or the C2 district was that they could not manufacture liquids outside of the industrial district. So as it was written, a brew pub or something could be open, but they couldn't brew on site. So I brought that information to council. I recommended that they pass an amendment quickly because this individual was interested in exploring the market here for a brewery. That's pretty much all the information that we would get. They're not obligated to call us and tell us this is what happened with this property, because we don't know really what the business deals they're trying to cut may be. However, I do want to say I absolutely would have recommended the zoning amendment if I had known that you could not open a microbrewery in either of our commercial districts at that time, regardless of somebody calling. That was about a month after I'd been here, so the question just hadn't come up yet. But it was a couple $100 essentially to advertise and draft the amendment. And I would not necessarily recommend not getting ahead of the curve when a zoning ordinance update can take well over a year sometimes. So I don't really have any concerns with the fact that we passed it.
Maybe to sell is, would it be okay if maybe you reached out to whoever inquired
I'm
and asked
still in
if they need
contact
anything else? So there you go. So they're still in contact and
Yeah.
still maybe moving forward.
I just want to make sure that if you, at that time, the implication was, we're gonna get this and we need to do this right now. So we did, and that's fine. And I actually agree with everything you said. I mean, your point's well made, and I agree with it. All I was wondering is if we were gonna get an update from administration is to say like, hey, by the way, this guy kind of flaked, no big deal, because, we still made the good change, and it's still a really prime location, but just so you guys know, this isn't coming.
I have had that conversation with several members of council when I've been asked.
Was it discussed here recently?
There was no public discussion of any potential business deals.
All right.
And I don't think you would characterize it as reflect.
No.
No.
I'm sorry.
We would not characterize that this person has flaked. He is still actively.
Thank you for correcting my
Interesting.
poor choice of language.
So,
as I
as of this date, there's been no real estate transaction.
Thank you for sharing that with council.
Is there anything else? Would you like to go on?
Yeah, there was something. We were, just to get back to the celebrates,
Mhm.
and we spoke about the dinners too. I'm wondering if the people that are operating the dinner over there would submit a report monthly to us about that dinner, about, money's out, money's in. I've never seen a report from the senior dinners, and I'm wondering if.
That's part of the borough budget.
Yes.
What is the opportunity or the difficulty with producing one of those? Because that would not be specifically for the volunteers to do that. It is part of our budget. We have, the costs are on our bill list every time, and we can identify them.
Yeah.
And you could pull out a report based on the accounts?
We could, there is a dedicated account in which the fees collected for the guests attending the senior dinner, that gets deposited straight in, so.
Because of Christmas, she has a report on just what we spend.
There's.
Yeah, I'd like to see what the dinner brings in,
There's a general
what's spent.
It's
Right.
in the office, it's in the office.
Expense line
Right.
item.
So.
It's already, well, can we put it in our monthly?
So it's separate, so you're asking for a separate report
Yeah, we get a
in
report
the
from-
monthly packets?
Yeah, we get
So-
a report from the library, we get a report from the fire department, we get a report from.
I just wanna
It's part of
understand
the rec board.
entirely what exactly, like what facets of this we'd be asking for.
So you're
because-
talking specifically about the senior dinners, which are a borough function, money monies in and out come to the borough, and that we pull a separate report out of our general financial statements and separate from the bill lists that we look at.
Well, when you say separate from the bill list,
It's already on the bill list.
I mean, the individual expenses are on the bill list.
Caterers
We have a
on there.
financial report that we
On
look
this
at.
bill
Yes.
list?
What you just signed up for, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, so, I mean, I'm just
I've
asking for
never seen it.
clarification. Well, basically, it's not all in, it's not necessarily in one place. You have the financial report that we get, that we look at basically quarterly, right?
It's usually the end of it's a backdated by month.
So there's a place where we can isolate it based on the accounts, but we could also pull a specific report that just has the expenses and the income for the senior dinners, along with the attendance number. Is that,
Yeah, I mean, we kind of, we get a number of RSVPs that come in throughout, you know, the weeks leading up to the dinner, and then we kind of just assume based on, you know, I think the attendance fee is $7, so whatever money we get.
times 7?
Yeah, divided by 7, that's how many people actually attended the dinner. That's typically how we.
So would that be
Figure it out.
much effort to produce that report
No.
from? Okay,
When we take
so then
money
let's
in,
go ahead
when
and
we-
do it.
When we charge the seniors, they
Right.
pay $7.
Right, so we can,
So
we can add that report
we
to the
can
monthly
break out
reports.
the numbers.
He's just asking it to be broken into one row.
Right,
So we can break out the number of people that RSVP, the number of people that actually attend, the revenue for each dinner.
I don't think we need to worry about the RSVPs, just who came, what
Yeah.
did it cost? How much did we take in?
Yeah.
What's the borough supporting? I mean, and we can see,
Right, I guess I'm just saying because we tend to order based on the number of RSVPs, but that's,
Oh,
okay.
that many
Okay.
people
What
don't
you're
actually
planning
show
for
up.
versus what you
So, yeah.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
If that's not a big ask,
That's-
then
that's
add it to
not
the
Teresa
bad.
packet.
does it every month for me, she breaks it down. Every
So she's
month.
already doing it, so we just ask her to add it to the packets.
Yes.
Yeah, we could, yeah.
But you would have those ostensibly?
Okay, and the sheet,
20 years ago when I started it, till now, I can, right now.
You're like your very own Google.
on paper, but not digital.
That's it, when they first did the plate, it was 13 houses, and they were all written out in hand, because there was no computers in the borough by then. And I saw.
Okay, moving on. I think that's enough for one night. Community announcements?
Did that.
Would
My
you like-
Tina? Sure.
Yes, you Tina.
So, all right, Concerts in the Park series, they start Thursday, July 11th at 7:30 PM, and they occur every Thursday through August 15th.
Oh, we did that, good.
Second announcement is just sort of a callback to the Side Yard program. Allegheny County's 2019 Side Yard Delighted Structure Program will be accepting applications through September 30th. Contact the Borough Administrative Office for more information. We will probably just bounce you over to the county, but also we have the information flyers for, you know, how to apply, so.
All right, and are there any additional citizens' comments at this time? I think we outlasted most of the citizens tonight. All right,
But wait, I want
Wait, oh, I'm sorry.
to just ask if we can have a plaque or something made for performing arts to hang down. They celebrate their 50th anniversary this year. And like, they have a nice seal on the back of their envelope, if we could have a plaque thanking performing arts for doing that for 50 years. It's 50 years for performing arts.
Okay, and this is is that a separate commission, a volunteer organization?
It is volunteers.
Organization. Any thoughts, comments about that before we adjourn?
No, 50 years is a long time, they should have a plaque.
Okay,
Where is this plaque going?
On this stage down at the park is where they have them every month.
Super. Is the stage named?
No,
Maybe they should
I
come through that.
think
on-
it's, but I don't
I
remember.
don't know, Eleanor Gates.
There's already a plaque down there, that's why I said it's
Put
Cody
that up.
stuff. so, you know.
It's what?
I think that, you know, maybe somebody should approach them and ask them if they'd,
Director was just in the office today, we should ask him
Yeah.
then. We'll call him.
what they would like to,
Okay.
you know.
All right,
I
why don't we do that,
think
bring
it's,
that
I
back
think
to
it's a
council.
little,
What would
a
you
little
want to
foolish
do?
of us just to
Yeah,
say, here, we're gonna get you a
Sure.
plaque when they
Well, they'd
want
like
us
something
to.
different.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll inquire about what they'd like, and we'll bring it up at the next meeting. All right? Anything else? We will be having a quick, and I mean quick, executive committee meeting after we adjourn. Meeting adjourned.